There's so much good music going on around here.
Let's hear from our studio audience now.
Yes. You're going to want to see that.
That is some groovy intro music.
Add it to the list.
Add it to the list. It's a running tab. Leave us a voicemail at 970-579-0843.
Welcome to Sound On Podcast. Sound On brings you all of your Boulder County music news, who's playing where and when. We also bring you exclusive artist interviews, jam sessions, album releases, and more. If you're an artist or venue and would like to have your show featured, email us at info@soundonpodcast.com. Tim Ostick's here. How you doing?
Oh, I'm doing well. Just playing some air drums to this background music.
Playing them very well, too.
Thank you. How are you doing, Dave?
Good, and thankful that you didn't go over and play the real drums over here.
Oh, I could do that. You should all consider yourselves lucky.
Well, we do have a great drummer here today, though.
We do.
Mike Wooten's here. He's a drummer that has been around the industry for a long time and has played with a bunch of great bands and names you've definitely heard of, including Leftover Salmon, Navarro, Carole King, and Clandestine Amigo. And we're very honored to have him here today and excited to chat with him.
Absolutely. But before that, let's talk about a few things going on right here in Longmont this week. Jessica Carson is here on the phone with us to talk about the Winter Walkabout, which is happening Saturday, February 2nd. Jessica, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing good, Tim. How about yourself?
Doing wonderful. So tell us a little bit about what's going to be happening this Saturday.
Yeah, so there's quite a bit happening. We've got 33 shows at 12 venues, and it's between 2 and 9 on Saturday, and everything's in the downtown district here in Longmont. So it's quite a lot happening.
Nice. Are we going to need a ticket to get to this?
So you will need a ticket. If you want to get into every show, some of the shows you have to have a ticket to get into. Some of them the general public can wander in, but if you do have a ticket, which is $25 for general admission, you get goodies at every venue.
Ooh.
So things like Georgia Boys, during their music, they're giving away a free pork sandwich. Long Tucky Spirits, during their music, they're giving away a free festival cocktail. Rosalee's is doing $1 pepperoni squares. That's just a few, but every venue has like a special deal if you have a ticket.
It's going to be worth getting the ticket.
Yeah, definitely.
I think so.
So who are some of the bands that we're going to see there?
Oh man, so many of my favorite bands. So the headliners are Banshee Tree and Bonnie and the Clydes, which I'm very excited about both of those. Some other bands that are total headliner quality, Foxfeather, Augustus. I hear that the Tim Ostick Trio is playing.
They're going to be there. Featuring David Ford.
Lucky Me is playing, which is a band that Michael Wooten is in. I hear he's your guest today.
That's right.
Native Station, Kyle Donovan, Danny Schaefer. We've got a lot of staples of the music scene and some people that are a little newer to the music scene. So we've got a pretty wide variety. We even have a classical venue. So we've got the symphony and some people from the chorale coming in to perform there. So it's going to be a pretty diverse group.
Awesome. So does the ticket guarantee access to every show?
It does, yes. And actually, if you get the VIP ticket, you get access to the after party, which is going to be at La Vita Bella. And the after party is for the musicians and the volunteers only. We're going to have food and drinks donated from Oscar Blues, who's one of our sponsors. And then we'll have an open jam set up run by a couple of good friends of mine. And any of the musicians can just hop up there and take part in the jam. So if you get a VIP ticket, you'll get to see musicians from different bands coming together and playing. And that's just something that you won't get to see anywhere else.
That's probably the part I'm most excited about.
Oh, me too. Yeah, I pretty much planned this knowing that I would want to go to it. So that I kind of like base this off of like, what would I want to see, you know? We also have a cool feature, which is the Wonder Tours here in Longmont, they have donated the services of their bus for the day. So if you don't want to walk to all the outlier venues, the trolley will do a loop from Long Street Tap House, and it goes to Georgia Boys Barbecue over on 3rd and Collier, over to Bootstrap that's on First Avenue, 300 Suns that's on First Avenue, Bootstrap on Pratt, and then up to Long Tucky Spirits on Terry, and back up to Long's Peak. So those are all kind of the outlier venues, and everything else is up and down Main Street, so it's all walking distance. Hence the name.
Awesome. Well, I think you guys have created a fantastic event, and definitely encourage anyone that can come out and check it out to do so, because it highlights a lot of Longmont's fantastic bands.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. Thank you guys for being one of those excellent bands in the mix. I appreciate that.
Well, thank you. And if anybody would like to learn more, there is a link to the Downtown Longmont website over at soundonpodcast.com. Thanks, Jess.
Awesome. Thank you. Have a great show.
That's going to be a great time. What else is going on this week, Tim?
I hear Foxfeather put out a new music video for their single, Come and Get Me.
Yeah.
And we just played that new single on this show.
Yeah. It was 3 episode interviews ago now. Yeah. So go check that out. That single was on the show, and the music video is playful and just a really good music video. Good one to check out.
It's worth a watch.
So shall we get into the music calendar?
Let's get into it today, Wednesday, January 30th at Rosalee's Pizza, Navara and Friends at 7 p.m. At 2020 Food and Wine Bar, we've got Mountain Duo at 5:30. At the Laughing Goat, Andrew Sturtz and Courtlyn Carpenter at 8 p.m. At Beyond the Mountain Brewing Company, we've got Bluegrass Pick featuring members of the Sweet Lillies at 5 p.m. That's a big get, the Sweet Lillies.
Yeah, it is. Thursday the 31st at Macky Auditorium, Silkroad Ensemble is at 7:30 p.m. At Lazy Dog in Boulder, Goose is at 8 p.m. At Taco Junkie and Tequila Bar, Aiden Pagnini Band is at 9 p.m. At the No Name Bar, Ryan Hutchins is at 10 p.m.
And then over at License Number 1, we've got the George Nelson Band at 9 p.m. Then back in Longmont, Teresa Storch and the Peter Laces Duo will be on at La Vita Bella Cafe at 6:30. At the Tasty Weasel, we've got Honey Tree Duo at 6 p.m. And over at Grosson Bar, Denny Driscoll Plays with Strangers at 6 p.m.
Friday the 1st at Still Cellars, Tim Ostick is at 6:30 p.m. Even Grace is at 5 p.m. at the Tasty Weasel. At the Dickens Opera House, the Eagles tribute band The Long Run is at 8 p.m. Taylor Shade Duo is at 6 p.m. at Chubburger. At Lazy Dog Boulder, Armchair Boogie is at 10 p.m. At Oscar Blues Boulder, Famous Men is at 7:30 p.m. and the Al Capones are at License Number 1 at 9 p.m.
Over on to Saturday, February 2nd. We got the Winter Walkabout Music Showcase, which we just talked about with Jess. More information is available by following the link in the show notes at soundonpodcast.com. That's where we'll be.
That's right. And Lazy Dog Boulder, Matt Flaherty Band is at 9 p.m. At Dannick's Gun Barrel Corner Bar, Nick Clark is at 7:30 p.m. At the No Name Bar, Food for Bears Duo is at 10 p.m. And at Oscar Blues Boulder, Eric Boa and the Constrictors at 8 p.m.
Gonna need to put Food for Bears Duo on the list to see.
Definitely.
Just because of the name. Moving on to Sunday, February 3rd. At the Speakeasy, we've got Stomp It. And I believe that's Super Bowl Sunday, so probably not as much music happening.
Right, that's what I thought.
Then Monday, February 4th, License Number 1 is the open mic with Foxfeather at 7:30.
And Tuesday the 5th, it's the open stage with Danny Schaefer at Oscar Blues Boulder at 7:30, and the open mic with our friend Andy Epler at Grossenbart at 6 p.m. So that's it for your music calendar. I am honored that Mr. Michael Wooten is here in the studio today. Hello, sir. Whoa! That's a great introduction.
Are you going to be speaking in this language
I'm
the
going to
whole
be speaking
whole time?
in tongues.
What do you call this language?
It's it's part duck. and no.
Did you bring a translator?
Part squirrel and red tabby. Maybe
Red tabby.
with a little touch of red tabby, yeah.
You was speaking red tabby with Simon earlier.
Yeah, exactly. Mike Wooten of Clandestine Amigo, among many other great bands.
Oh, yeah. Jessica's awesome.
Are you having fun out here playing music?
You know, if you'd told me 10 years ago that I would be living in a small town and playing almost every day as much as I wanted and never having to travel anywhere, I would have thought you were crazy. And especially if everybody I play with is really good. And it's amazing. Couldn't be happier. I'm retired. I thought I was going to be giving up music pretty much if I retired and didn't travel anymore, because I wasn't going to, and I'm not going to. Not getting on anybody's buses. I've had several offers already, but the road nearly killed me, and I was lucky to survive it, so I'm happy to be not on the road anymore. But when it came time for me to retire, it's been 7 years now, and I'm 72. So I was 65 when I retired.
Retired from being on the road?
Yeah.
Full time?
Oh, my God. And I was ready. I was thinking, well, this is it, for music. Goodbye, music. Nice knowing you, Mm-hmm. But I ain't doing it no more if it requires traveling. And I just settled in for the long, lonely winter. And surprise, surprise, I started going out to open mics just for the heck of it to see what was around, and met Jessica and Andy and you guys, an unbelievable amount of wonderful human beings, talented, kind, generous. I just discovered a whole new circle of friends that are all just hanging out in Longmont, being cool and playing in great music and doing great art. And I was like, wow, I couldn't believe it.
So do you miss being on the road then?
Oh, do I miss it? Let's see, how do I miss thee? Let me count the ways. Not like a toothache. I miss it.
Especially when you have this awesome community here,
Yeah,
right?
I mean, why get on a bus and go to nowhere? I mean, well, it's not nowhere.
It's everywhere, which turns into nowhere.
Yeah, it all looks the same. We had an old saying in the band we were playing with Carol was, "Where are we? What day is this? Well, it's Tuesday. This must be Chicago." And it was, it was a common thing that somebody would always say, "Where are we?" I mean, to wake up in the morning and look around yourself and not know where you are, it's like, wait a minute, look at your itinerary. It's Tuesday. This must be Chicago, or it ended up always being Chicago. But it was like the answer was always, well, this is Wednesday. It must be Chicago. No, wait, we didn't know. I mean, everything looks the same. And this is traveling with the likes of Carol with first class plane flights, with being met at the plane with 3 stretched limos and taken to a Class A 5-star hotel.
Sure, and that's Carole King for anybody that doesn't know.
That's like you don't know where you are. It's like you travel for weeks and you play every night and sold out shows, and you get somewhere in the middle of the week and you don't know where you are.
Sure.
It all looks the same. Even at that level, it just...
Every hotel looks the same.
Yeah.
Even like the audiences and the shows, did that become to feel like the same thing?
It all looks... I mean, backstage looks the same, and it's like... It's frustrating. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you're traveling by yourself or if you're on vacation, you get to look around and experience the differences in places, and that's fun. You're free to do what you please and look around and explore and investigate places. Then you learn more about them. But when you're on the road in a touring band that plays, almost every day, you got to travel in between your gigs. So most of the day is spent traveling, and that's spent in limo, on a plane, in a hotel, in a backstage of the concert hall, and then back on the plane or back in the car to the plane or whatever. and you're driving, even if you're driving down the road in the limo, you look around and it all looks the same. Every city has the same signs, the same colored buildings, the same. It just all looks so much the same, and it drives you crazy. Even at that level, it's pretty weird. And years of doing that will make you crazy.
Do you still remember that first tour when you first hit the road and started doing that lifestyle?
I've been doing a lot of stuff for a lot of years. I may end up getting inducted into the Colorado Music Hall of Fame because of a record I did in 1969.
Huh.
Wow.
That's amazing.
That's probably before you guys were born.
Barely.
A couple years.
What was that record?
It was a record with a local band called Zephyr that was... do you ever heard of Tommy? Everybody knows Tommy Bolin, the guitar player, with Deep Purple and all these awesome bands.
Yep.
He was the guitar player for Zephyr in the early days, and he branched off from them and went big time and ended up ODing at age 25 or some ridiculous, really incredibly talented young. First guy I ever knew with a rainbow strip dyed in his hair. You know, that was, you never saw that back then. And when he left the band, Jock Bartley, guitar player for Firefall, and I were in another band when Jock was like 18 or 19 years old. And he and I joined Zephyr together and did their third and last album for Warner Brothers Records. They did a couple albums since then with different labels or whatever, but we did their third and last album on Warner Brothers. It's called Sunset Ride. And the band and Tommy Bolin first got inducted into the Hall of Fame, and then the band is getting invited too. So that's going to drag me along with the rest of the band because I was only on one of their records. But there you go. I mean, I've been doing this for a long time and at different levels, you know, of big bus, little bus, big bus, van, big bus, plane, train, little bus, van. I mean, it's been up and down so many times.
So, yeah, I do want to take it back to the very beginning of your music career. When did you start playing drums, and what inspired you to pick up drums?
I was living in an abusive home and starving in the backward area of South Carolina. And my real father, who I hadn't seen, I was maybe 8 or 9. My real father was in the Navy, and my mother had remarried and had 5 or 6 kids, and the stepfather was not pleasant. And my real father came and got me and my older brother and sister and took us with him, which to me was like being rescued by the king of Middle Earth, you know, showing up with his army. Took us to Puerto Rico, where he was stationed at the time. I pretty much grew up in Puerto Rico from then. And early on, about 9 or 10, I was amazed by a band that would practice behind on a stage behind the building at the Navy base there in San Juan. And I would get out of school every day, and I'd have to walk across that area to get home. And I stumbled onto this band rehearsing there, and it was a big calypso band with steel drums and all the percussion and stuff. They were mostly American service people, but they actually traveled around the world as this like 75-piece calypso orchestra, if you will. And I was just blown away. And every day I would look for them, and most days they would be back there practicing, and I'd just go hang out. And I got sucked into music before I even heard any rock and roll. I was like into cowbells and timbales and all these different cuicas and kibasas and all these different toys that they played, and the way they played them. And the guy was showing me, well, this thing has a certain job to do. This isn't just a noisemaker that you can make noise with all the time. You have to do this certain thing that fits with the other rhythms. That some of those calypso rhythms take 15, 20 parts, percussion parts, to make up that whole rhythm. And I learned that early on, and then I was invited to play in a high school marching band, snare drum, when I was in grade school. And after we moved back to the United States, I started getting into rock and roll, and I was playing in bars when I was 14 and going to high school. And then Kennedy got assassinated, and my father, being a Navy man for many years, pretty much his whole life, and my older brother being decorated for the Cuban Missile Crisis when that happened, and we were thinking there was going to be a nuclear war, and my brother was in the Navy and in the boarding parties that would stop Russian ships in the middle of the ocean on their way to Cuba and board them and search them. If they found anything suspicious, they'd turn them around and send them back. And that's not easily done when people have guns. And he got a medal for that. And so Navy was my family tradition pretty much. And I always expected I would end up in the Navy. In fact, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to show my dad, that I had the right stuff. And when Kennedy got assassinated, I was 17, I believe, or 16. And I joined the Navy and got okay from my father. I went into boot camp at 17 years old, which is unusual. They only usually let you in at 18, but there's a special situation they can let you in early, and I got in early. It was probably a dumb decision during a war, during Vietnam, to volunteer for the military. I figured I was going to end up there, I never end up in Vietnam, but I got a ribbon for service for that. And I had a band in Iceland. I was stationed in Iceland for a year. I walked in, they had this barracks that was, mix of Marines and Air Force guys and Navy guys. And mostly Navy guys were medics and radiomen. I was a radioman. So we weren't anywhere near the ocean, but I was in the Navy. And they sent me to a barracks where we each had our own rooms. And I'd never been in that situation in the Navy. It was always, 100 guys in a room.
Sure.
But this was private rooms. I had a private room, and I walked in, and the only piece of furniture was a turntable. And the only record was Rubber Soul by the Beatles. Ooh. And I had that. That was what I listened to for a year in Iceland.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Man.
But I had a band, and we called it, back then, we called it the Trees. And back then, there were no trees in Iceland. And our motto was that we were the only trees in Iceland. But they've since found a few trees there, I think.
So that band had to move on.
We had to move. We had to change our name.
So what happened after Iceland then?
The rest of my Navy career, and then I met a young lady in Charleston, South Carolina. I was stationed on a submarine tender, and I could tell you some stories, but they'd have to kill me. But I met a young lady who I fell in love with, and she was awesome. And she had just been divorced, had a little girl, and she wanted me to marry her and come live with her in Kentucky. And I was like, I don't know about Kentucky. Maybe it's cool. I'd have to see. But I had plans of going back to Colorado because I joined the Navy in Colorado. And I wanted to play music and, be a wild man. And I didn't think the married life was for me. But she talked me into driving her from South Carolina to Kentucky. As it turned out, she had just inherited a tobacco farm and was looking at being hugely wealthy and wanted me to run this farm with her. And so I did a few things to get experience, how to hang tobacco and dry it and all these different things. And I was like, you know what? This is all colorful and all that and promises of money and big bucks and all this stuff, but this is not me. I'm not a tobacco guy. And I'm sure it broke her heart. It kind of broke mine too. But I told her I couldn't do it. And I left and came back here. It's probably, I got out of the Navy in late 67. And I was back here by 68, by late 68. And then started playing and recording with bands right away. Got sucked into Zephyr and did that record and then did all kinds of other stuff off and on through the years.
Was it mostly based out of Boulder and around this area?
Home based mostly around this area, yeah, but I traveled a lot. I spent a couple of years down in Austin, Texas. Most of my Facebook friends are from Texas.
I see.
I've got like almost the limit, I think, now of friends, but a lot of them are not from here. They're from mostly Texas. A lot of Nashville and different LA, California people, New York. But, recorded in New York and LA, and we used to record at A&M Records a lot with Carol. And recorded at the Caribou Ranch. Did a lot of recording in Texas.
So in between the time around, Zephyr, you said that's 69, 70, somewhere in there. So in between that and then your first album credit with Carole King is in 77, from what I saw.
Right.
So what happens during that time frame?
I played in a country band, more like country rock band, and played in all the ski resorts and for 2 or 3 weeks at a time, for a couple of years with a band called Slumgullion. And they're still pals and everybody's still alive, believe it or not. And we were pretty popular in the bars, around here. And then I ran into the guys in Navarro at one point, and they were playing up in the mountains, living in teepees and coexisting in different cabins and school buses and stuff. Playing with a band called Magic Music a lot, who were kind of our sister band. And
I see.
Good friends and still are. And I went off and played a little with Navarro, and then I got invited to play backing up Chris Hillman in a band that became Firefall. Jock and me and Mark Andes, the bass player, was a part of the early Navarro band, and Mark Andes was from Spirit and Jojo Gunn and played in Heart and played with Joe Walsh, plays with all kinds of people, Danny Fogelberg. But Mark called me and said he wanted me to do this thing, and so I ended up backing up Chris Hillman for a while, who was the bass player for the Byrds, played in Flying Burrito Brothers, played with Stephen Stills and Manassas. Chris Hillman at the time was less than a nice guy. He could have been nicer. I'll just say that. But we toured up and down the East Coast for a while, and they Chris was going to do a record, and Firefall was going to do their first record, and I didn't feel all that good about that experience, so I went back to playing with Navarro, who were living in teepees in the mountains, and turned down that project just because it didn't feel right to me. I've never really tried to hustle myself. I've never really tried to sell myself or promote myself. I post things on Facebook just because I want a reference of things that I've done for myself. I don't post it for other people more as much as I do for myself, just to have that memory program collated or whatever you call that. But I never promoted myself. I just kind of followed my heart, and it hasn't steered me wrong. I've always just kind of fallen in and out of things, you know, in a kind of a haphazard way, but it always seemed to work for me.
Sure.
And, you know, not too long after I got back with Navarro, we decided to break up.
Oh.
Actually, we were doing a lot of things, crazy things, but it was all original, always was all original stuff. And I had bought an old school bus myself and redid the inside, and I was going to go take my young wife and go on the road and travel around in our old school bus like hippies, you know.
Yeah.
Well, exactly like hippies. We were hippies. Do you know what you call a woman who's married to hippie?
No.
Mississippi.
Oh!
No. Yeah, we got a call. I got a call. And I was just moving the last of our stuff into the school bus up in 4 Mile Canyon and getting ready to get in the driver's seat and start driving, and with no point of reference to go to, just to go. And the phone rang as I was about to walk out the door.
Whoa.
And it was Mark from Navarro, and he said, okay, here's the thing. Would you be into getting the band back together? And I said, I don't know. Why? And he said, Carole King called me. And evidently, Danny Fogelberg had brought her up to a gig that we were doing up at the Rollinsville Stage Stop one night. And we were the first band, I think, that made that floor look like it was going to cave in.
Oh, really?
And I guess she had been at Caribou looking at the studio for something, and Danny Fogelberg was an old friend of ours who had sat in with us and stuff every now and then. Played way too loud, but he was great. He ran into Carol at Caribou Ranch Studio, and she said, well, what's going on around? Is there any good music around? And he said, well, I'm going to go sit in with Navarro tonight. You're welcome to come along. It's not far from here, you know, and he pointed down the street. And so she came to our show, evidently, and I didn't see her. I didn't even know she was there.
Oh, wow.
I guess somebody in the band talked to her. Mark talked to her. Danny introduced him, and he gave her his phone number, and she called him and asked him if we would be interested in playing on her next record. That she wanted to change things up. She wanted a band that was a band that had all, you know, kind of. We were, I don't know what you would call it. We were pretty ethereal. And
Sure.
Not musically ethereal, but in our attitude about life, we were, you know, we were pretty high a lot, but it was more just, you know, love and we had the Atlantean dancers, we called them, you know, the spinners, you know, the young hippie girls that
having
would
the
just
religious
twirl
experience
in front of us and just look like they were out in another world. We called them the Atlantean dancers. That would always, they loved our band because we just sang about love and, you know, kind of sappy stuff, you know. A lot of people didn't like us because of that, but we had a big following. And
so what was your reaction when you got the phone call and that was the reason why you
I
wanted
looked
to get the
at
band
my
together?
wife and I said, should I play on a record with Carole King? And she went, yeah. That was her favorite music at the time. Carol's album Tapestry was selling out more than any other record in history at that time.
Wow.
Her record was somewhere around 50 million copies. And I don't know where it ended up after that, probably even more, but I think it was Michael Jackson that came out with an album that beat her record sales. Yeah. And from then on, it was all kinds of people started beating it. But she was ahead of the Beatles at one point in record sales. And so we thought, yeah, we could do that. We'll go play on a record. So I drove to California in my old school bus and parked it behind her beach house in Malibu and slept on the deck at night in a teepee that was set up on the deck behind Carol's house in Malibu, listening to the ocean. It was so awesome.
I bet.
And we played on that record, and I'm in the studio at A&M Records and thinking, man, I hope I'm funky enough for this, because I think the guy that was her drummer before me was Bernard Purdy, and I was like, holy shit.
Wow. Yeah, that's a huge name.
I can do this. And I looked up, and in the control room window was standing Quincy Jones.
Whoa.
And who's the black woman that sang with Leon Russell, was married to Leon Russell for a while? Oh, God. There was all these people.
Sure.
James Taylor was in there at one point, I think, and everybody wanted to hear Carol's new band, you know?
Sure.
And I'm thinking, come on, close the curtain, will you, at least? Man. I was like...
So what was it like going from kind of playing these like mid-level circuits and tours and stuff to going into more of the full production where there was a larger budget, and Carol's attitude towards approaching things?
Carol was awesome. I mean, she is a lady, royal, queenly, unbelievably generous. I've seen her give away houses, property, luxury automobiles. I mean, just handing them out to people. I mean, she gave away an incredible ranch in Connecticut to some Swami guy. And actually, Swami Satchidananda was the Swami guy who came to our show, and one of our first shows in L.A. And Carol is awesome. She is, in fact, Swami Satchidananda stayed at Carol's house with us for a while he was there. And Carol was unbelievably wonderful, easy to work with, pleasant. I mean, she had 4 little ones at the time, and would be teaching us songs, pointing out horn parts to the horn player, playing keyboards with kids crawling under her legs. I mean,
wow.
One little boy, Levi, was at that age, you know. Levi!
Right.
She every now and then she'd be singing this beautiful love song. She'd go, Levi, put that down! And come back going, la, 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 love and light and wonderful. Levi! But she was awesome, man. She was just the coolest person on earth. And
do you remember what it was like taking the stage with her for the first time?
Yeah, it was a little bit disheartening because we would open the show do a couple songs before her. And the first few songs, we were booed.
Oh, wow.
And it was pretty humiliating and very educational in that, okay, it doesn't matter how good you are or who you think you are. They're not here to see you.
Sure.
Hello? They were here to see Carole King, and they want Carole King, and they want her now, and they don't want to see you. And so we had to deal with that.
Wow.
And Carol, we should wait until after you play, and then we'll play. And she was, no, this is how I want to do it. We're going to introduce you to my audience. It was her whole plan. And she called us her side-by-side band. She never called us her backup band. She called us her side-by-side band. And that was so wonderful. She's just so sweet like that, you know. She was always trying to empower people, you know. She wasn't into that whole I'm bigger than you thing, yeah. But
do you think that helped her success and helped her connect with so many people, that mentality?
I don't know if people really knew her as she really was. I mean, people when you're famous and they see your face and they hear your music and they hear your voice and whatever, they think they know you.
Right.
But, you're probably a different person in private. And she totally was. Mm-hmm. She was a very private person. Mm-hmm. In fact, one time she had this big ranch, and I can't say where, bordering on wilderness area, very private, natural hot springs and everything. And lived in a one-room cabin with no running water and no electricity.
Wow.
And was giving away mansions in Connecticut and here and there, and fancy cars to people living in a cabin with no running water in this huge wilderness area. And she, one day, we picked her up at the airport coming in, and we're headed back to the ranch. And she wanted to stop at the store on the way because, there was like probably a dozen or two of her dearest, closest, oldest friends that shared this area with her. She lives sort of communally with her dear, close, trusted friends. But is very private otherwise. And I'll tell you why. We stopped at the store to get stuff and was shopping and had everything picked out and waiting in the checkout line. And some woman looked at her and said, "Aren't you Carole King?" And she literally froze and had to be escorted out of the building and sat in the car. And then we went back and got the stuff and paid for it and left. She was so paralyzed by fear from being recognized in her private sanctuary that she froze. I mean, I'd never seen anything like that before. Somebody just go, not say anything, didn't appear to be breathing, didn't blink. Just froze in panic, and we had to escort her out. And I'd never seen anything like that before. And it kind of was a wake-up call that, fame ain't all it's cracked up to be.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if being recognized by a stranger can send you into that much of a panic, fame is not a good thing.
Mm-hmm. Right. So the same year you put out the first album with Carole, you guys also put out an album as Navarro, right?
We did 2 of our own and 3 of hers. The first one we did with her ended up being called The Lost Album, which is an interesting story. I think I shared something about this on Facebook.
I did. Yeah, I did see that, and I was going to ask you about that.
A friend of ours, Jono, down in New Mexico in Santa Fe, had a studio. An old friend of James is a studio engineer that I share a house with. And he had a friend from LA that found this master tape that had been in the trash, I guess, and somebody had given it to Goodwill.
Oh, wow.
And it was in a pile of junk at Goodwill.
Oh, my God.
In LA. And he found it and looked at it and looked it over and was like, wait a minute. This is a master tape of unreleased original music. And he sent it to his friend in New Mexico and said, see what you can do with this. See if this is salvageable. And this is fascinating. And he posted something about it. And finally, Lou Adler, who was Carole King's producer manager at the time, well, not at that time, but not at this time, but back then, produced a Tapestry, which sold on, and other people, but mostly Carole. He even got in on the conversation. Was like, "Yeah, I want that tape."
Oh, wow!
And was like, "Oh, how did it end up in the trash? If you want it,
yeah,
But it's all perfect because it could be a huge thing for her and for us now, because people flip out over lost art.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, you find a Monet or a Picasso that's never been seen, and look out.
Right,
Your phone is
right.
going to ring off the hook, is
Yeah.
all I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
And so this could
Do you
be
remember?
huge.
You remember this session?
I was actually, to this day, is still probably my favorite album we ever did with her.
Really?
Wow.
Why is that?
It was just really, it was really spontaneous. It was really heartfelt. All of our energies were in the right places, and everyone played beautifully, and the songs were beautiful, and we were just so happy to be doing that with her. And we felt like we were mutually helping each other out. And it was just a wonderful, I mean, we'd do, prayer circles before every recording session. I mean, it was kind of hippy-dippy in a way, but it was beautiful in a lot of ways, in that she would just poured so much love out to us that we were taken away by it. We just were floating on a cloud with her.
Wow.
It turned out to be a really cool record, and it was disappointing to us all. I mean, we went right back in the studio with another record label after she left Lou, because that's why it got shelved, because that was with Lou Adler as her record. I mean, it was supposed to be on Ode Records, and Lou Adler was supposed to be her guy, and they had a falling out at that time, when just as we were finishing up the record.
I see.
And she decided to go with Capitol. She signed with Capitol Records, and we signed with her, and we went right about doing more records. We did 2 of ours and 2 more of hers, and we never saw that record again. It was the lost album. It still is called the lost album between us,
Yeah.
But now it's found. And
So have you heard it since the tape?
I have not heard it since then.
Wow. Are you excited too?
Isn't that weird? I'm curious about what's going to happen with it. I'd
bet.
love to hear it again. It'd be wonderful.
Yeah.
Do you know if that's going to happen? Is there any talks?
The
between
word is
doing
that people who know Lou Adler say that he's planning on releasing it. Wow. It's funny that somebody like that has that power to take original music from an artist and keep it and not give it back to them.
Yeah. It's ridiculous.
Who does that? Anyway, you know what I'm saying.
It's really cool to see how you've seen so many wild sides of the music business and so many dirty and tough things, I'm sure. But now, years later, you're here with a bunch of us who are just kind of starting, and you seem to love music as much as anyone. How have you kept that? How have you kept that alive?
I haven't always kept it alive. It's come and gone, and then come back, and then gone again. It's like over 50, 60 years or however long I've been playing. It's come and gone at least a half a dozen times, quite profoundly, where it's been my life and my love and my everything. And then I like to think of the music business as a cruel mistress that you can't get enough of, but she's so mean to you. And you keep letting her do it. And why do I do this to myself? It's like, sometimes you just go, you know what? I'm out of here.
Yeah.
Goodbye. And you go away and you do something else for a while. I drove big rigs. I always wanted to be able to drive a huge truck. Being on the road all the time, you're in tour bus, and you're always getting passed by these semis. And it's like, wow, look at that truck, man. My God, all the bells and whistles and smokestacks and air horns and everything. I was like, I want to do that. So I did that for several years. And it was pretty interesting. But I came back to music, not so much as I've never really looked at music as a career or a job. It's weird. A lot of people really dedicate themselves to promoting themselves in their music,
Right.
as it's their career. They want it to be profitable, and it could be. I never saw it that way. I always was like, hey, I could play some drums on something probably. Yeah, well, let's do that, And I never cared much about whether it was with the best players in town or not, but it always seemed to end up being the best players in town. It was like we always shared the same motivation and attitude about music, it seems. It's like you walk into a group of people and you just kind of, you get attracted by certain things, and people attract each other who have the same vibe or whatever, if you will. You know, I see that as a magical thing. And I get people attracted to me and vice versa that have like minds. And it's always worked out for me. It's just, this is a wonderful, beautiful thing.
It is.
And I still love music for that reason, not because it's could make you money or famous or anything like that. I actually am afraid of being famous.
I think we all should be.
We should be. We should be. We should be afraid of being profitable too. Money is the biggest crazy thing. And you think you got money, you think, okay, I can buy things. But that money brings with it a lot of weird stuff. So be afraid of money, be afraid of fame, and just follow your heart, I guess, is all of my advice I can give anyone, really. It works.
So then in the 90s, you started playing over with Leftover Salmon, right?
That's a whole book that's in the process of being written.
Really? By you?
Oh, my God. Talk about crazy. The first gig I did with Leftover Salmon, we'd only practiced twice. And we played the Foxfeather. It was sold out, packed. And I'd never really, I mean, I'd heard about it, but I'd never really experienced slam dancing. And a mass of people just going together in unison, and with bodies being passed over the crowd from one person to the other, or people jumping up on stage and just turning around backwards and looking at us and waving, and jumping backwards off the stage into the crowd. And people, I tried dancing. I tried getting out in the crowd a couple of times when I was a little more solid. And I got the crap beat out of me. I was like, what? This is dancing? This is dancing. It was like, you know, people just slamming into you, just would knock the wind out of you, and you would laugh about it, you know. And most people would laugh back, but I was like, ow.
So you would rather be on the stage than in the crowd, is what you're saying.
Oh, yeah, that was the Leftover Salmon, yeah. That was, they've actually calmed down a lot, I mean, compared to what they used to be. Oh, my God, I've got stories you wouldn't believe. Sheesh.
We got care to share? Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I should probably not mention names and locations,
dates, addresses, right?
Phone numbers. But one of the main people in the band one night, everybody was, well, not everybody, but some people were suspected of having consumed certain substances, and we were pulled over in the bus, and we were pulled into a truck stop. We're going to go in, get some supplies and maybe some water and whatever, you know, snacks. And this person decided they wanted to go in to the truck stop, but we couldn't let them because they'd been naked for the last several hours and weren't thinking, didn't look like they were planning on putting clothes on. And we're like, no, you stay here. You can't go in the truck stop. And no, he wanted to go. And we're like, okay, get some clothes on him. Somebody hold him while I put his pants on. And he couldn't get the clothes on him. And finally, we just ripped a sheet off one of the bunks and wrapped him in the sheet. And okay, come on in. And he'd start walking, and the sheet would just fall off. And we were like, okay, come here. We grabbed the washboard, and we hung the washboard on him, and that kept the sheet on. And he stopped and looked in the mirror, and he went, I'm Cajun Swami. And he became Cajun Swami forever after that. And we went into the truck stop with him looking like Cajun Swami. And we were walking up and down the aisles getting stuff, you know, and I noticed these burly truck drivers were like looking, I'm talking about, and I looked at what they were looking at, and this guy was walking down the aisle with a sheet. It looked like one of those hospital sheets. It was open in the back, you see the all the way down skin. And I was like, oh my God. Get him out.
Get the Swami.
Get him. We got to get him and wrestle him out of there.
Oh, my.
He's going to get either beat up or arrested or both.
Oh, that's amazing.
That's just one of many stories, I'm sure.
Oh, my God. There's some cool stories, though. I mean,
When are you going to write a book?
I'm in the middle of a couple, but it's like, I don't plan on finish them. I'm just going to keep adding to them as much as I can, and then, I don't know, throw them away or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe burn it in effigy, and then I could finally let go. No. Yeah, a lot of good stories. I got a million stories, but I don't want to keep you guys here all day.
It would be us keeping you here
You're
all
going to
day.
need to eat eventually.
We can get some takeout.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I do have a few questions here from some listeners that are interested. So you had this energy that's super kind and teaching about you, and I'm just curious who your mentor was and where that came from for you.
I don't know. I'm not sure I have an answer for you with that. I've had people that I learned things from all off and on around through my life a lot. Not any one person that I could put my finger on as far as being a mentor, but I've learned from a lot of people. I learned something from everybody that I ever knew, pretty much. It's like you're attracted, whether you know it or not, to people that have a like mind, and like attracts like, and you always learn something from that, or share something that, or are awakened up or reminded of something you forgot or whatever. We do that for each other all the time, and I just kind of grew up in an atmosphere of wanting to share whatever I had with whoever, was open to it. I don't know that I'm any kind of teacher or nothing, but I would like to save people a lot of heartache if I could, and remind them, do not go on the road. Whatever you do, don't sign that contract, because it's not what it's cracked up to be. But at the same time, a lot of these people really want their careers in music to blossom, and that takes getting out there and getting your face and your music out there to people, unless you have a record company that's going to distribute it all over the place. But I think those days are almost over, if not already over.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, with the internet, it's so easy to put things out.
Exactly, yeah.
Just
so
like we're
we got
doing
the
here.
internet now. Yeah, we don't need to go on the road.
Sure.
But it's fun to a certain extent. I can't say that it was all nightmare. Most of it was a nightmare, but there was some fun moments.
So what advice would you give to somebody that's wanting to start out a musical career?
Who was it? Coltrane, or one of those jazz awesome guys that said, master your instrument, master the basics of music, and then forget all that shit and just play. I'd say, just play, just have fun. Don't get up there thinking you got to be great or you got to impress somebody. Get up there thinking you're just going to enjoy what you're doing now, and it's just going to make you feel good. And forget about who's watching or who's listening. Just have fun. That's what it's about. Just have fun. Don't take it so seriously.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
Take it way too serious.
So this question's gonna bridge into the next thing I want to talk about, and you'll know who this question comes from. This question is, how does it feel to be the cat of the music world, having lived at least 9 lives and being as sweet as Mr. Mo?
Who said that?
That was Jessica.
Yeah, Jessica said she wanted to reincarnate as one of my cats.
Yeah.
I don't know if I have an answer for that either.
Well, do tell me a little bit about playing with her band, though.
Oh, no, man. I tell you, that's one of the joys of my life. I mean, Jessica's music plays itself. You know when you're in the presence of greatness, when the music is so effortless, it just kind of falls out by itself. And I don't know that we even really practiced all that much when I first started playing with her. In fact, at all. I'm just walking to open mics and jams and stuff, and she'd say, "Well, hey, want to play?" And I'd, "Sure." And we'd get up there and, what are we going to do? I don't know. Let's see what happens
Just
when I count
something.
to 4.
Yeah.
And it just comes out. It's like, I don't consider myself all that creative in terms of coming up with parts. I can play almost anything I hear. Like if I want to learn a song that's recorded, I can learn what that drummer's doing, whatever that is. I did a Steely Dan tribute band thing, and I had to learn 40 songs and chart them out.
And that is
with
difficult
only
drumming.
one rehearsal.
Yeah. That's very technical stuff.
I got through it.
Yeah.
Yep. But when it comes to being creative and coming up with a really cool original parts, I don't know that I'm that guy. I can play almost anything, but I can't come up with new stuff on my own, I don't think. Unless the music is like Sean Benites or you guys, or somebody that's so creative that the music plays itself. You just jump up there and you join in and you play along, and all of a sudden you go, "Hey, I'm doing this." It just happens.
Yeah.
Right.
You know what I mean? I don't know if that answered your question.
It does. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. How has working with that band changed your outlook?
It's definitely been a huge part of my confidence in that this area is going to have a renaissance. It's already showing signs that, people gather together. People come together almost like magnetically. And I think people are coming here from all over. A lot of people are like, "Go back to Texas, no more room in Colorado. We're done." No offense. But I don't ever feel that way. I always feel like, bring it.
Sure.
Come on down. Let's do this, I like to empower people. I like to think that people empower each other when they have the same mindset. And that's obviously happening around here. I see it. We all
definitely.
see it. Right?
Yeah.
Every time we go play somewhere, it's like, wow, this is cool.
It is.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know. Yeah. And I've been places that didn't even have as much as we have here now, that exploded into a big scene. So I'm pretty sure it's going to happen here.
Mike Wooten, thanks for sharing an hour with us.
My
I could
pleasure.
talk to you for, a bunch more.
Oh, I got a million stories.
I'm sure you've got rehearsals to be at, so.
Nice. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Michael.